and we will be kicking off the senior conferences next week. So we hope that you enjoy tonight's presentation and, get a good baseline and foundation of information that you need moving into your senior conference. So with that, I am going to begin presenting. Okay, so welcome the class of 2024, and this general presentation is designed to get you started and familiar with the college application process, and your senior conference with your individual counselor will be more comprehensive and tailored to your students' post-secondary plans and goals. So just a few objectives for this overall presentation. We are going to give you an overview of the application process, some of the common application procedures, some of the Naviance student procedures, and general preparation for the senior conference itself. So while this particular presentation is geared towards the four-year college application process, we certainly recognize that there are many students who may have some alternate post-secondary plans that they are considering. There's a whole host of options for them to consider. And on our college and career site, we have a whole page devoted to additional options post-CHS. So when this presentation is put on the website for you to review at a later time, if you click this link at the bottom of this slide where it says additional options post-CHS, you will be able to go to that particular page and gather that information. Okay, so the senior conference is specifically a meeting that includes you, your counselor of record, and the parent and guardian to discuss the college process and follow up from your junior conference last spring. This will be a meeting in which we will provide information about the process, answer any questions that you have collectively about your plans. Information has already been sent out regarding how to schedule your conference date in the parent portal. Please work together with your student in selecting an appointment time so that you can schedule a date and a time that is ideally during a non-academic period. We recognize that there may need to be exceptions, but please make every effort to select a time that does not interfere with a class. The conferences, can be very detailed and usually will take a minimum of 30 minutes, but sometimes we'll run over that and sometimes into the duration of the class period. So that's another reason that making sure the appointment is during a non-academic or free period, such as lunch or a study hall, would be best. The conferences begin on September 5th, which is coming up next Tuesday, and they run through November 1st. So there'll be plenty of time and options to schedule your appointment. In advance of your meeting, you will receive an email with important reminders from your counselor. This will go both to the parent and the student, and there will be attachments in that reminder email, links to important information that will give your student an opportunity to just have a few of those tasks completed ahead of the conference so that we can maximize the time and focus on the dialogue. So at this point in time, in the aftermath of your junior conference leading up to the start of the school year, we feel that there are probably some assumptions that we expect you to have completed at this point in time. First, we hope that you have a list of schools identified in your college I'm applying to section of Naviance. We understand certainly that you may be finalizing your list or may make changes at different points, but you should have at least a good plan of schools that you are confident and ready to move forward with applying to at this time. We really encourage that the list should be healthy and balanced, should be a blend of schools that has a good solid amount of target schools, a few selective and / reach options, and a few likely schools so that you will optimize your chances for admission to the schools of your choice and have good options to select from. You should also be keeping an organized list of deadlines and requirements for each school so that you know what they are and can plan accordingly, as many schools vary in terms of their application due dates and their requirements. Additionally, you should have secured at least 2 teachers to write a letter of recommendation for you in support of your applications. As we start the school year, it will be very important for students to follow up with those teachers that they secured as a reminder and to inform them of any updates or changes to their plans. As far as the procedure for inviting them on Naviance to submit their letter, this information will be shared out to seniors and parents via Gmail and School Messenger beginning tomorrow, September 1st. So all of that information will be forthcoming very shortly. Okay, on this next slide, this basically just gives you an overview of what we call the anatomy of an application package. So obviously, the main point of the application itself is the student side, the application that encompasses all of their background information, family history, educational history, and things of that nature. From there, it will also include the essay, their activities. Their transcript will ultimately be a component of that application that the school counselor will send via Naviance. Their teacher letters of recommendation also sent via Naviance through their teachers. And then the school profile and the secondary school report, which are what we call supplemental materials also that will already be uploaded into Naviance and automatically go as a package deal. Test scores are also a part of the application, but given that some schools and many schools now at this point are test optional, it may be that some applications are not including test scores for certain students. And that will be, an opportunity for you to discuss in your senior conference specifically whether or not your child is going to send or not send their scores out to specific schools, or maybe a combination thereof, depending on where their scores fit in with the average admitted test score for the schools that they are applying to. We'll touch upon test scores in a future slide. Okay, so
just leave it. Just leave it.
The majority of schools are on the Common Application, and Naviance and Common App work together so that your materials and ultimately all the other supplemental documents can be merged together into an application file on the university and college side. We strongly recommend using the Common Application because it is the platform that is most widely used by colleges, and it really streamlines the process for your student so that they don't have to manage multiple application platforms for a variety of schools. It just makes it easier for them to manage. And then, as with anything, there are some exceptions. There are a small number of colleges that are not on the Common App and have their own application through their website. One of those examples that is shown on this slide would be the University of California schools have their own application on their website. There are a handful of schools that this also may be the case for, and you will see that on their website where it indicates how you can apply. All the information is there. But if the school is on the Common Application, that is the platform that we recommend that students use. So self-reporting grades. So there are some schools now that require students to self-report their courses and grades. And this can be done using two things. One, the Common App has a section on courses and grades. And as you can see from this screenshot here, one of the nice features about Common App, when the students are inputting all of their schools and get to this section on self-reporting grades, there will be two columns, and it will indicate for them which schools require the grades and courses to be self-reported and those that do not. So there's an opportunity to do it through the Common App specifically. But then there are some schools that are considered self-report schools. And some of those institutions are going to require a document called the SSAR, which is the Self-Reported Student Academic Record. And it's very important to follow those instructions if a particular university or a college that you're applying to is one of the self-reported schools and requires this document. So a student will use their transcript. They can access that in the portal and have that with them when they are inputting their courses and grades. It makes it a lot easier to input the information correctly. And then the classes that you are currently taking will also be inputted, but they will be noted as in progress. And when the transcript gets sent, they will also be there as well on the official copy that the schools receive. So they will also know what courses students are taking in their senior year. At the bottom of this page, there is a link that will ultimately, when this is posted, you'll be able to access it. That will take you to a page that gives you some guidance on linking and submitting the transcript information to the SSAR. So it looks like this. So that link will take you to that page when the time comes.
I also just wanted to add on this note for the self-reporting grades. Most students will be aware that they need to complete the SSAR from direct communication from a college upon submission of their application. So oftentimes after submitting, you might get an email from the school providing another link to the SSAR. Another way that students access this sometimes is through the college's portal that they established upon application as well. There might be a box to check that you've completed their SSAR as well. So typically the college will communicate with the student via either email or their portal to let them know that there's this additional piece to the application process.
Okay, so on the FERPA release, this is highly important. So this is what's called the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. This release paves the way for two things. One, it gives us consent for us to send your records out to colleges and asks you to confirm whether or not you will waive your right to access your recommendations. This is important to know because there are some colleges that will not read the recommendations unless they have confirmation that you have waived your right to access. Waiving your right is protocol in the eyes of the colleges. It sends the message that you have confidence in the individuals writing for you, and it preserves the integrity of the letters as well. So this is a very, very important piece of the process. And I can tell you that in all of the years that I have been here at Chatham High School, this is the protocol that our students have followed. It's in their best interest to waive their right. And so we encourage you to support us in that endeavor so that all of the records can be appropriately sent and reviewed on the college side. Okay, so a couple of messages have gone out about the Chatham High School records release form. So there are going to be two sections in which a FERPA and a release are signed. And one of those ways is on our side. So this is specifically the Chatham High School records release form. This screenshot right here, when the presentation is put up for viewing after tonight's presentation, just by clicking this screenshot will bring you right to the form itself. So you will be able to access that very easily. And this form will give us permission to send the records out for your child. So the requesting for transcripts and teacher letter recommendations, as I mentioned at the outset of the presentation, will open tomorrow on September 1st. So it is very important that the records release form, if you haven't done so already, is signed right away. Not signing this document does not prevent your child from making the request for us to send your transcript out or the teacher letter recommendation. But when we go to actually submit the documents, we cannot do so unless the records release form has been signed. So that's another reason that that's really important, so that, when everything is in order and things are ready on our side, we'll be able to just hit the buttons and send everything out without any additional delay. Okay, so moving a little bit into the different ways that you can apply to schools. So this gives an overview of the different types of application plans. We know that early action over the past many, many years now has become a very attractive and desired way to apply because students can apply earlier with deadlines in and around some as early as October 15th through November 15th, December 1. Some of those are considered within the early action timeframe. This platform of application is a non-binding agreement. So that means that a student can apply to multiple schools early action and still have the opportunity and flexibility to choose and hear from the decisions from those schools and make a good choice about where they ultimately want to attend based on the outcomes of those applications. We recommend that if you're applying early action, we have said in the past that we really encourage students to make careful decisions, well thought out decisions about reviewing the overall list that they have and maybe reserving the early action application plan to the top 3, 4 highest choices on their list. Not necessarily every single school on the list because they happen to offer that early action plan. Because remember, the term early really also does tie along with it the sense that you're demonstrating interest in a particular school. And so if every single school on your list is being applied to in an early action fashion, sometimes that can give a little bit of some mixed messaging on that. Moving on to early decision, this definitely is a very clear, definitive plan. As you can see down here, applying early decision is a binding agreement. So this would be one school and one school only. And again, this is an application plan that should be a full discussion, student and family together, because of its binding agreement. First and foremost, you want to be absolutely sure that the school that you were applying to early decision is your top choice, where you would definitely want to attend. There aren't any doubts or reservations in your mind because you've researched the school well and you believe it is the best match for you. But also because of its binding agreement, you also want to have the financial discussion about, whether or not you will be able to either afford to attend that school or be able to manage, the financial package that is ultimately, released to you, which you may not get your full financial package at the time that you are applying and ultimately receive a decision. So this is another reason to have, really some good dialogue at home about whether or not early decision is the best option for you. In terms of a restrictive early action plan, very, very few schools have this. I mean, it's like just a handful. And I encourage, and we encourage everybody to read the decision application plans that the schools that you are applying to have on their website. If they do in fact have restrictive early action, it will be highlighted very specifically because there are some parameters around those types of plans. The general gist of a restrictive early action would be that a school ideally would say, you can apply to us early action, and you can apply potentially to other schools early action or regular decision or rolling. But if you apply to us early action, then we restrict you from applying early decision, the binding agreement one, to another school. So be very careful to read the fine print on that in the website rather of the school where that information is housed. Mr. Barbado, do you want to chime in on any other information on the restrictive early?
No, I think that's great, and I would definitely agree. This really depends on each school, the few that offer it, in terms of what the actual restrictions are. There are some schools that may restrict the student from applying early decision to other public schools. There might be others that restrict the student's ability to apply to other private, and there might be others that just restrict them from applying to any schools, through early decision. So it really does depend on the school. Like we said, luckily there are just a few schools in this category anyway, but you do need to read the fine print.
Okay, thank you. So just to kind of wrap up the early section, so the timeframes for there, as I mentioned before, are typically, sometimes as early as October 15, running through November 1, November 15, December 1. That's usually the time frame for the early application plans. Rolling admission is a different type of plan. There are a handful of schools out there that have a rolling admission. This is a situation where there is no set deadline for when an application is due. The schools will review the applications as they are submitted and render decisions throughout the admission cycle, and will continue to do so as space is available for their freshman class. So while in a rolling admission, there is no set deadline that you have to really be overly concerned or stressed about, it is probably better to apply on a little bit on the earlier side of the overall application timeframe. It doesn't necessarily have to be targeting October 15, November 1, because like I said, there isn't a specific deadline date for rolling admission. But the earlier side is definitely better. And then as applications start to increase for a rolling admission application plan, that could then impact, potentially the turnaround time on the decision by a few weeks. So that is the basic overview of a rolling admission application plan. And then there is regular decision, which is, more traditional application plan in terms of not applying so early in the fall months. Typically, a regular decision deadline would be anywhere between, say, December 15, January 1, January 15th, February 1, all the way up through March 15th for some institutions. And in a regular decision scenario, the traditional notification date is usually towards the end of March, no later than April 1. Those institutions will give students a decision back. In the early application plans, typically students hear somewhere beginning in early December, mid-December through the holidays in early January. Okay, so in the event that you apply early decision, it's very important to know that you have to complete a form that indicates that you are aware of the early decision policy and that it is a binding agreement, and that if accepted under the binding agreement, if you have any other applications that you put out there simultaneously, because you can, do that as long as it's not a restrictive early action school, you will need to withdraw those applications after you have received a favorable decision from an early decision application. So there are two forms that you will need to complete. One of them is the Chatham High School Early Decision Agreement form. This is something that your counselor of record will provide to you in your senior conference potentially, or email it to you, or it is in our senior forms and resources section on the College and Career website. So it is accessible there, so you can access it ahead of time. But this document in particular, I want to clarify, does not go to the colleges. This is an internal early decision agreement form that's for us in our office, so that your counselor of record and our secretaries who oversee the transcript sending process with us along the way, we are all aware that, a student has applied early decision to their chosen institution, and it can be reminded appropriately to withdraw those applications that from other schools at a later point. So this early decision agreement form can be signed in your senior conference specifically if the decision has been made to move forward with that application, or you can hold on to it until you have reviewed all of the schools that you're applying to and have decided how you're going to apply to those particular institutions and may or may not have made a decision to apply early decision. So again, this should be a very, very careful choice. You do not have to apply early decision to any institution. And I really encourage all families and students to have a very open dialogue about, whether or not you will proceed with an early decision application, just so that you're making sure, for all the reasons we stated before, that it is a good match for you, that you're going to be comfortable there academically, personally, as well as financially. So that's the CHS early decision agreement form. Then you will very importantly sign one on the application side. The Common App specifically, once you identify that you are applying to one of your college's early decision, then you will be prompted to complete the early decision agreement form on the Common App. So you will check the box that you have read and you understood the early decision agreement and that it is binding. And once you sign that agreement, then there will be, that is the student. Once the student signs the agreement, after the conversation has been had at home and you are moving forward, then there will be a box that comes up for the student to identify a parent. At least one parent has to sign the early decision form, and they will type in your name and the email address that you indicate that you would like the agreement to come to. And then when you receive it on your side, you will follow the steps there in your email to sign off on the agreement. And then having done both of those steps, when your counselor of record goes to send the documents out to your schools, and in the early decision school in particular, they will sign the early decision agreement on our side as well through Naviance. So that's the step there for the early decision agreement. Okay, so as another part of the application process could potentially be submitting an ACT and or an SAT to the colleges that you're applying to. And this is something that is a very individualized process. Not every student sends their scores to any college. Not every student sends their scores to some and not others. It will vary from institution to institution and student to student, based on whether or not a school is test optional and you want to take advantage of that. And that will be a conversation that you will have more specifically with your counselor of record in that particular meeting to discuss where your, child's test scores have fallen in terms of their range, if they've, tested, and you can have greater discussion with them about whether or not you will actually submit scores to any of your schools on your list. It is very important, I believe, and we believe here, to know which schools are test optional. And while it will say it on the individual college's website, you can also go to a website called fairtest.org. That is a site that houses the list of all the schools in the nation that have test optional policies. And we encourage students to at least make a notation on their running list of schools that they have, that they know specifically which schools on their list are test optional or not, because then that will assist you in the greater discussion that you're going to have with your child at home and with your individual counselor of record to make decisions about whether or not to send. Now, having said all that, test optional means test optional. And if your institution that you're applying to does not require test scores, you do not have to send them. So that is a choice that you have. You are not penalized for not sending them. It is very rare that any institution has any other supplemental material or task that they need you to complete if you don't submit their scores. That's pretty rare nowadays. I mean, there could be a few schools out there that may have something specific, but for the most part and the majority, that is not the case. And they will simply review the application on all the other components that are submitted. Okay, college funding. So this is another big part of the process. And, as I mentioned when talking about the early decision plan, that the financial discussion needs to be had. This should be a conversation that you have at home, regardless of how you're applying. It's very important to have a good handle on what, your situation at home is, so that you can be very open with your student about what is affordable and what can be supported with all the schools that they may be applying to. And in doing that, it is really important to be aware that there are certain documents that need to be filled out if you will be seeking financial aid and wanting to be considered for scholarships and potentially academic grants and just any other aid that can support you in funding your college education. And so there would be 2 documents that you will be required to complete if you are looking to be, in particular, considered for federal financial aid. Definitely the FAFSA has to be filled out. We do encourage families that even if you think you will not qualify for federal money, that it is still a good idea to fill out the FAFSA anyway, because having done that, you could potentially be considered for other sources of aid on the institution side. And that is where, for many schools, the CSS profile comes into play, where both the FAFSA and the CSS profile need to be completed and submitted to those schools so that you can be considered for other monies that are not federal aid, but maybe on the institution side, and it's still money that you don't have to pay back. So that's really important to keep in mind. There will be lots more to come on college funding. We will be hosting a college funding night later on in October. The slide at the end of this presentation will identify the date for that, and you will also get a school messenger telling you to save the date for that evening as well. And that will be a very comprehensive overview on the FAFSA and CSS profile and college funding in general. This link right here, when the presentation is posted, if you click college funding information, that will take you directly to our college funding information page on the College and Career website. Okay, Mr. Barbado?
Okay, sure. I'll jump in here for this slide. So basically, this slide just covers a couple of the, several different financial opportunities and financial programs that are available specifically for New Jersey students. These are New Jersey specific programs that are primarily income based. The EOF program, Educational Opportunity Fund, and the New Jersey Community College Opportunity Grant. So again, these will be discussed or reviewed in more detail at the financial aid presentation. And also we mentioned on this slide, HESA, also known as the Higher Education Student Assistance Authority. If you Google that, it'll take you to their website, which is pretty comprehensive. They oversee a lot of these income-based programs at the state level. So I would definitely encourage you to check out the website. There are a lot of good resources on there. The bottom right there, where it says New Jersey Transfer, the 2+2 programs. For those who might not know, in the state of New Jersey, our county community colleges have agreements with our 4-year public colleges in that students who attend our 2-year county colleges can transfer their credits to a 4-year college where they can finish their degree. So they would be doing, if they go full time, 2 years at a community college. And then once they finish that, they would go to, after they apply and get accepted, of course, they'll do the last 2 years at, say, a Rutgers or a Montclair State or another 4-year public school in the state of New Jersey. And there are formal agreements between those public schools and the community colleges where credit will be earned and maintained throughout that transition. So that's sometimes an opportunity for students who are not ready to make the jump directly into a 4-year college from high school. And also there might be a financial reason for it as well, because if you go this route, you'd be paying your first 2 years of college at the community college rate, which will be cheaper than the 4-year college rate. So it's also a cost savings incentive as well. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind for students who might be interested in starting a community college and then transferring over to a 4-year school without losing those credits.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so switching gears a little bit now to highlight accessing Naviance. So if you go to the Chatham High School website and you click on the counseling tab, you will see a whole host of links to different resources that we have in our counseling site, and Naviance will be listed there. I have it circled in red here. I know it's really small, but if you click that Naviance link, that will take you directly to the login page. You can also access Naviance directly with the link that's written down here at the bottom. And in doing that, that will take you to this page right here on the left where it says, welcome to Naviance student. So the very first important thing to note here is that the student, when logging into their account, should, click the student button. So that's specifically for their account. And then this welcome student over here on the right where it says log into Naviance is what will come up next. And this is very, very important. So a few years back when we switched over to our login system with Clever, it was a big shift for many students to remember that we were using the Clever platform to log into Naviance. And there are still many kids who forget this and email us asking for their access code, which we no longer utilize. That was if they logged in using this platform below, which we no longer do. So be very cognizant of the fact that you want to log in using the Clever button. And then once they hit that button, they will be taken to the login page. And this is the other thing, so they will no longer need a code. It will be their username and their password that they use to log into the network, to Gmail, to Schoology, everything here at school. It's that username and password that they will be able to use to log in to their Naviance account. Okay, so primary tasks in Naviance. So basically, you're going to be building and searching, your schools and creating your colleges I'm applying to list in this particular section of Naviance. It will outline your deadlines. It will outline your method of applying. And then also in Naviance is the avenue through which students will request their teacher letters of recommendation and their transcripts. I'll clarify here that when students make their transcript request in particular, that includes the counselor letter with it. So there is no separate request that a student needs to make for their counselor's letter of recommendation to accompany their transcript. That goes as a package deal together with all the other supplemental materials that I mentioned before, like the school profile, the secondary school report for the Common App, and so forth. When this presentation is posted, these links right here will take a student and or you directly to the page that will outline the instructions for how to request transcripts and letters of recommendation. So when you will click on those links, it will bring you to a document that looks like this, and it will walk them through the steps of how to do that. And as I mentioned before, that will be launched starting tomorrow. Okay, so when a student is in their colleges I'm applying to list, they will be entering their schools, and in the colleges I'm applying to list, it will come up with several line items for each school that is entered, and it will show how they are applying because they will have already selected the application plan that they are planning to apply to that school for. So early decision, early action, regular decision, and so forth. It will highlight the deadline. Ultimately, when a transcript is sent, they'll be able to track that their counselor sent their transcript in their letter, as indicated here in this column, because it will indicate sent. If it has not been sent yet, then it will be indicated as requested. So this will be a way to indicate that. When things are sent, you'll be able to see that as well through this column of office materials where it says initial materials were submitted. So that will be another way to track that. I want to point out here that a school that is self-reporting will automatically default to initial materials submitted in the system, even if the counselor has not yet sent the transcript. And that's because it is a self-report school and the student will have completed the SRAR on the application side. So really the column to pay attention to is the transcripts column for us in terms of tracking whether or not the transcript and the counselor letter of recommendation have been sent. But additionally, other information here that's important to be aware of is it will be the type of application platform that a student is using. So they'll be asked in the drop-down boxes as they are putting in their schools to indicate, are you applying Common App which, as we said before, we encourage that for all schools that have the Common App so that it streamlines the process for them. But for those handfuls of schools that may not be on the Common App, or in a rare circumstance where a student has chosen to do the institutional application, because there are some schools that are on the Common App but also have their own application on their website, and they certainly can do that if they so choose. They may do so, but that's when the icon here that shows that it's a Common App school, but the red line is going through it there, that tells us that a student chose not to apply through the Common App for that particular institution, and they applied through the institutional application on their website. So that's very helpful information for us to know. So that's why when the schools are entered, it is critical that students identify the application platform that they are applying through. And then for schools that are non-Common App, a computer screen will still come up, but it will not have a CA in it, which indicates that it's not a Common App school. So just so that you're familiar with those particular icons. And then ultimately, it will also have the opportunity for a student to update us down the road as admissions decisions come in and indicate whether or not they've been accepted yet, or if the decision is unknown. And there will be lots of reminders that go out to students about all of this as we move through the process. So it's not something that they all have to hold in their head and, know immediately to do. We send out a lot of information going forward. Okay, so another important step, which is going to be and has been sent to them in the messaging that we've been sending out to date and will continue to send out. And there's a document called the Preparing for Your Senior Conference, which we've sent a link out to already. And you will receive this link again in the reminder email that each of your counselors of record send to you in advance of your meeting date. And it's very important that within that document, you adhere to the step on matching your Common App account with your Naviance account. We cannot send any documents through to the institutions until the accounts are matched, because that's the mechanism by which all of the documents get funneled. And until they're matched, there'll be a block and it won't be able to go through. So once a student has followed the steps to match their Common App and Naviance account, then this top bar up here that's in red will look more like this down here in green, and it will say very specifically that your Common App account has been matched. The directions in the messaging that we've sent out are very clear and succinct, but if anybody has any difficulty with matching their accounts, you can reach out to your individual counselor or to our interim college and career counselor who's in for Mrs. Slate. Her name is Mrs. Jennifer Jordan, and she can field those questions as well. Okay, so teacher recommendations. One thing that is very, very important is to make sure that your deadlines are accurate on Naviance. A lot of this is driven by when a student selects the method in which, or the application plan rather, that they're applying: early decision, early action, rolling, or regular decision. So you want to definitely make sure. Some kids forget to select that in the drop-down box when they enter their schools into colleges I'm applying to. And the other thing that we want to clarify is that you will only use Naviance to request your teacher's letters of recommendation. In the recommenders and FERPA section on the Common Application, there is the option to make requests for the teacher and counselor letter through there. And if the student happens to do that, it's not a problem. So don't worry if that's something that you've already done or accidentally do going down the road. But you still then need to make sure that you follow the instructions for requesting teacher letter of recommendation for us in the Naviance side, so that our teachers can upload their letters accordingly and send them out appropriately to the schools that you're applying to. It's very, very important that students follow up with the teachers that they've requested for them to write letters. They should follow up with an email as the, in the coming weeks to, remind them that they did accept their request to write their letter back in the spring, and to highlight whether or not they may be applying to a specific school or schools in the early time frame. It's very helpful if teachers have a heads up on that, even if, they'll see it when they go into Naviance, but they are writing for many, many students. And the more notice they have, the better. And so you really want to try to give your teachers at least 3 to 4 weeks in advance of your earliest deadline, and so that they have that lead time to finish up the letter and get it uploaded and sent out. Now, I want to clarify something here. This goes for both the transcript request and the teacher recommendations, that when a student makes those requests in Naviance, it doesn't mean that the documents go out the next day or the next week even. You need to give everybody ample time. Many teachers are writing for 40, 50, possibly plus students. Each of us in school counseling have our entire senior caseload that we are writing for and sending documents for. So everybody has until the actual deadline to submit the materials. That doesn't mean that we aren't doing our due diligence to get everything turned in, and as soon as the possible time frame as we can. But I just want to reiterate that sometimes, the requests go in and there is the expectation that the submission is going to be instantaneous. And that is not the case. So just give us ample time. We take this process very seriously. We understand how stressful it is, and we are right there with you. And I promise you, our department is amazing. We are a team. We help each other out. We will help you, and everything will get submitted on time. Okay, so this is an important slide to pay attention to, because this highlights the deadlines for when you need to make your requests in advance of when your applications may be due. So you need to look at your colleges I'm applying list and have a really good indication of whether or not you're going to apply to schools in an early time frame. Because if you are, then these early dates will be very important for you, and they will come around quite quickly. So for example, I'll just zero in on the November deadline, because that is the very traditional early action time frame. If you are having a school or schools, whether it's one school or multiple, it doesn't matter. You go by the earliest deadline you have for any school on your list. And if it's November 1, you need to submit your transcript requests by Wednesday, October 11th. And likewise, you should try to do the same on the teacher side. So use this as your guide to help you get your documents requested in the appropriate time frame. Okay, so submitting your application does not necessarily mean submitting everything. Usually when we refer to the application, we mean the student side of the application. What the teachers do, what we do in school counseling, those are typically referred to as the supplemental materials that then, ultimately merge together with the student's application and complete the file. So I want to reiterate here that students do not need to wait for us at Chatham High School teachers and counselors to submit our side of the supplementary materials before they submit their application. If your application is ready to go and you are sure that you've crossed every T and dotted every I, and you would like to get your side of the application off your plate, by all means, send it out. We often encourage students to set their own deadline of when they want to have all of their applications complete and off their plate, so they can get back to business and focusing on their coursework for senior year and enjoying senior year, because there's a lot of fun events that they want to be able to take advantage of and have the stress of the application off their plate. All of the other things will follow, and it does not matter the order in which everything has been received. If a college happens to receive a letter first or a transcript first, they simply start a file in the student's name, and as all the additional materials of the application are submitted, they will complete the file. So I can't stress that enough, that a student doesn't need to hold up the submission of their side of the application because they're still waiting for us to submit, and vice versa. Mr. Barbado, do you want to chime in on anything else there? Or,
No, I
good.
think that covers it. Thank you. It was very thorough.
Okay. All right. So on the student side of responsibilities, it's very important for them to understand is what is required of them for each school. So it's very important to go on the website and look under the applying section. It's very easily highlighted there what the requirements are, specific deadlines, how many letters of recommendation are required, or how many are allowed. So that's very important to be aware of. And the complete and submission of the application and the fees, that's on the application side for the student. They'll be responsible for sending their standardized test scores if they are in fact sending them. If a school is not self-reporting and a student is going to submit their ACT or their SAT to the institution, then you need to go to the testing agency's site. So College Board for SAT, an ACT student for ACT, and have the official score report sent to the institution directly. We recommend that the score reports are requested a few weeks in advance of the earliest deadline that you have, because there is some processing time with the agencies. And of course, as the volume creeps up, it may take a little longer for them to process those requests and get them out. Having said that, a lot of schools will give grace to the score report arriving. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to make it exactly at the time that the due date for the application is identified. They understand that sometimes the test score may get held up by the agency. So that's okay. Don't stress about that if it's a few days after or a week or two after. As long as the college receives those materials prior to making a decision, when they're in the review period, you will be okay. But by and large, you just want to make sure you try to make every effort to get things in by the deadline. Okay, so then just make sure you make your transcript requests and letter of recommendation requests on time, and fill out the parent guardian record release form that we spoke about earlier. Okay, so just to reiterate, the documents sent by the counselor will be the transcript. The first one that will go out will be the initial. That's the one we have in the bank to date, which will have 9th, 10th, and 11th to completion. And then, as indicated before, the senior year work in progress. There will be a mid-year transcript that will go out at the end of the first semester in early February. And then that's required by all the schools. And then the final transcript at the end of the year, post-graduation in June, will be sent only to the school whose offer of admission a student is ultimately accepted. The counselor letter recommendation will be sent by us, obviously. If you haven't submitted your brag sheet yet, and you still need to finish that up, please get that to us, because that is critical in helping us personalize your child's letter of recommendation as much as possible. The secondary school report will be sent if it's required by the institution, which it mostly is through the Common App, so we will take care of that. And then our school profile will also be included. So those are all the supplemental materials that we send. Okay, so mid-semester grades. So I'm going to say right at the outset that not all schools require midpoint grades. In fact, very few schools require midpoint semester grades. So we do not automatically send these. These are by the request of the institution only. And around that time, we will, some of you who may have been through the process before may have heard our term, the snapshot grades for seniors. So there'll be a date that will be identified, and we will have all of our senior teachers bring their grades as current as possible for students. Those grades will be pulled into what's called a interim grade report. And if an institution requires the mid-semester grade for a student, then we will send that document out. And students will have to give us evidence that their particular institution is requiring those mid-semester grades, which could come in the form of an email. It might be on their application portal checklist, or it may be on the website. And forwarding the email to us or sending us screenshots of those other two methods will suffice in allowing us to send that mid-semester grade report. Okay, so to kind of, as we begin to wrap up our presentation for this evening, I just want to highlight that this was a general overview. We tried to give you as much information as we possibly could through this presentation. As we indicated, it is being recorded and it will be posted shortly. But going to our college and career planning site is where we house all of our information on this process. There is so much here. And this sidebar list will take you to any particular section of the process for which you need information in that category. I highly recommend that both students and parents familiarize yourself with this site. Take some time to go into each section and just see what's there. There's a lot of information that will be very helpful to you in this process. But right now, we want you to focus on the senior forms and resources section, because that's where a lot of the documents that need to be complete and the information regarding the college application steps is housed in this particular site. So definitely check it out. And then finally, there'll be some upcoming events that you can, put on your radar. So we will be getting senior conferences starting next week and running through early November. If you haven't signed up for your conference through the portal, please do so, because we will be closing the portal out next week. And so you'll want to get your appointment time in before we close down the portal. Our college rep visits will kick off next week on September 7th and run through mid-November. More information on that will be forthcoming from Jennifer Jordan, our interim college and career counselor, both to students and families. So you'll be in the loop on that. And then, as I mentioned before, our college funding night will be hosted a little later on in October, on Wednesday, October 17th at 6:30 p.m. That will also be a virtual presentation. It is highly comprehensive and informative, so we encourage you to check that out. Mrs. Jordan will also be posting out to our senior students information regarding her lunch session drop-in hours, so that they can pop in there and ask any questions that they may have as they go through the process and while we are conducting our senior conferences. And then she will also indicate, any drop-in hours other than lunch that she may be available to support your students. So with that, we'll probably, move into our questions, but we really hope that this presentation has been helpful to all of you in getting you started. We wish you all the best as you move through this process. Know that we're right here with you through the entire timeline, and just reach out to us if you have any additional questions after tonight.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Colbert, for going through all of that. Again, we as a department are here to support our students through this process. We know that it can be a lot. There aren't any questions in the chat box, so we're going to close out in a second. But I just wanted to remind you to please feel free to review any of this information either on your own through the recording that will be made available to you, or with your counselor of record during the senior conference. But otherwise, have a good night and enjoy the weekend.